Happy New Year. For 2025, I have an entire year of lettering style challenges planned out for you. So in working with my publisher and writing books the last couple years, I've had to create a ton of new lettering styles from scratch. So to start with, before this challenge begins, is I've written a blog post for you and it has 7 tips that I think will help you create new lettering styles. These are the main tips I use every time I sit down to develop a new one. And the challenge is free. It's gonna come via my newsletter every single month and you'll get a worksheet set that looks like this. So the first month we are doing a beveled serif. There are not a lot of those online, which is a little challenging because you can't get a lot of inspiration. At the same time, it's great because it really challenges you to come up with it on your own. And since not a lot of them exist, you can get really creative. So I wanted to kind of show you what the style challenge will look like each month for the free worksheet versus the optional workbook that I've created, so you can see my alphabet in that. So let's start with the challenge. So it'll come to you each month, like I said, right in your inbox. This will be January's. You'll know that one of my 7 tips is that I always start with a single letter for inspiration. And that can be something I've drawn, something I've seen, it just depends. This month it's one that I drew. So I'm gonna give you each month a single letter to inspire you to create your own full alphabet. I happen to keep this one all capitals the first month, but if you wanna add lowercase as well, feel free. And if you wanna change up the single letter and make it different for your alphabet, that is absolutely fine. You can do whatever you wish. So in the blog post, you'll read about how to create your design brief and your vision board, and then you're gonna go ahead and make yours. In the blog post, you'll see my example, what I wrote down for this first style challenge, and then you can do any preliminary sketching right here. Then there's space for you to create your entire alphabet. I was gonna put the letter O here, but I ended up not doing that in case you change it. So you can also print it, you can get the iPad version, whichever you want to do, but you'll go through all 7 letters, 26 letters. And then there will be a link if you optionally want to get my full workbook where I've created the full alphabet and then given you some tips for making it your own. You can optionally get that each month for my shop. You can see my first style is called Optimist, and I will show you a sneak peek inside the workbook next so you can see what you're getting if you choose to get that. All right, so if you choose to get the workbook from my shop, this is what you can expect. There will be a version for your iPad, a PDF, and then you can also print it if you wish. So let's just swipe through it quickly. So you can see my cover page. It'll tell you a bit about the style features and the ways that I customize it, so you can use it as a benchmark and create your own variations. The basic steps for your sample letter, my refined sketch versus my full color. This link is actually to this video lesson here. And then there's a full alphabet that I've created. Then I've given you a full where we fully break it down in case you're new to lettering or anything like that. And then you're gonna be on your own. So you can trace the first one and then draw it on your own on the bottom. And I'll kind of detail the steps I do for that upcoming in this video where I break down a single letter for you, and then also the different ways that I use to color it in Procreate. So you've got all your letter practice, and then down here I'm gonna have you draw your name in that style or whatever word you choose just for a little practice on your own. And then I've given you some different options for customizing that style and making it your own. And then also another challenge where I've kind of changed up the style of the beveled serif, that one's a script, to kind of get you creating even more alphabets on your own. And then again, there's a link to that 7 tips for creating your own lettering styles from scratch. And then the terms of use, people always ask about copyright. You're always free to sell original artwork you create, and then just how to properly credit if you're copying my work exactly, which is fine for practice purposes, but you do want to credit artists online if you're copying their work exactly. And then a few links to my social and the newsletter if you want to keep getting the challenges each month. All right, so I will kind of flip you through the blog post. I'm filming this, you can tell by my nails, I'm filming this early in December, but I want this all to go live on January 1st for you. And I will show you a sneak peek at the 7 tips in the blog post, and then we will go ahead and do a full letter and color it in Procreate. All right, so here's a sneak peek at the blog post, and it will be live as well by the time that this all goes live. There'll be links in the captions if you're watching it on YouTube or anything like that. So I created a fun little graphic, 7 tips for creating new lettering styles. You can read it in detail with the link. That shows my first. I kind of use Optimist as an example, but it talks about how I gather inspiration, what you can do to gather inspiration as well, how to create the design brief we talked about in the free challenges in the vision board. So you can see there's my design brief, so you can read an example. I gave you my vision board and what was my inspiration for the Optimist style, my color scheme, all of that. And that's my secret tip. Use a single letter as your starting point. So that always helps you have a starting place. And it just really is what I do every single time. A single letter is my inspiration. And then you're going to study and refer to classic and well-designed fonts. And I've given you some of my examples, and that just helps you learn the particulars like crossbar placement, serif placement, all that kind of thing. And then sometimes the hardest part is sitting down and sketching the entire alphabet. And then you're going to revise and refine. And I talked to you about my process for that, how many times I do it, what kind of elements I repeat exactly to kind of give the font consistency. You can see all my serifs here and kind of my second or third revision. So I go through multiple times. And if you're doing that on paper, you can use tracing paper or a light pad to get the same effect as on. It's certainly easier on the iPad, but you can definitely do it by hand as well. And that's just talking about repeating that as needed. And then a friendly reminder about your goal is to be original and not copy other people's work. So I've linked to Austin Kleon's Steal Like an Artist book. That book is older, but it's amazing. And it's a really good example of how to be inspired versus, just copying other people's work, which we never really want to do. So if I open this link, it should work. You can see a chart from his book. And this talks about good theft versus bad theft. So good theft honors, bad theft degrades, good theft studies, bad theft skims, and so on. Our goal is not to rip off or imitate or plagiarize, but to credit, transform, and remix. And I just think that is such an amazing tip for artists. So if you don't have his Steal Like an Artist book, please go grab it on Amazon. It's something you'll refer to again and again. And it'll really give you confidence for learning how to be inspired without copying other people's work. All right. And then, of course, if you're new to lettering, I've got a sneak peek at my lettering book. Those are 10 of the styles I did for the Art of Playful Lettering. And then my folk art coloring book has a lot of different lettering styles as well. And then book 3 is coming out this summer of 2025, probably late summer, maybe like August, and it will have 10 more lettering styles as well. So I'm hoping to share more about that soon. So that is the blog post that will really get you started, and you'll use that as a reference for this entire year as you create all your alphabets. All right, let's create a letter and color it in. All right, so I've got our inspiration letter here, and I'm gonna work off that to show you how I draw a letter like this. So first thing I'm gonna do is let's just create our own guidelines. So I'm gonna use my sample letter to show you how I usually do that. Really easy, just grab any color you want. I'm gonna grab just a thin brush. Let's try that, just a thin monoline brush. And then I'm gonna create my baseline. And you can use your arrow tool to tap that down. Remember, if you've learned any lettering at all, O is one of those letters that has a little bit of overshoot, so it comes below the baseline. If this is new to you and you're a lettering beginner, all of this is detailed in my beginner lettering book, The Art of Playful Lettering. But basically your baseline is just where the letters sit on the bottom. And then we'll put up our top line and our X height. So I'm gonna put that just right about where my serifs sit. Since I'm not doing a lowercase alphabet, I don't have a true X height, so I'm gonna use it as my guideline for where my serifs all sit. And then I'm just gonna pinch those layers together and rename that guide. And then I'll just drag it down out of the way. And if you wanna reduce the opacity, you can tap the N and make it lighter if you use too bright of a blue. I'm gonna make sure you can still see that on this screen. All right. So now I'll add a new layer. I think I can keep the same pen that I'm using, but I'm gonna switch to a darker color. So I'm just gonna draw an oval. And I want it to, again, overshoot the top and bottom line just a little. And if, when you're drawing on Procreate, if you hold your pencil down, you can see it creates an ellipse for me. If I were to tap my finger down, I'd get a perfect circle, but I want this one to be more of an oval. And then you can also click Edit Ellipse, and you can straighten it up or change how your overshoot is. I want it to be about the same top and bottom, but I'm just gonna eyeball it. And then I'm gonna do a new layer just because that makes my life a little easier. And I'm gonna draw a second oval right about the same shape in the middle. And then I'm going to just visually center that up as well. And then I'm gonna do the same thing one more time. And this is gonna create my bevel line. And the reason I'm not making it overly perfect is because I still do want it to have a hand-drawn look. This is where clicking Edit Ellipse can be handy, and you can kind of try to get it a little more centered. And also because we have it on multiple layers, that really helps us as well. So just kind of visually get it where you want it. You can also tap the arrow tool and kind of move it around. But that looks pretty good. So now I'm going to pinch all those layers together like that. And then I'm gonna create my serif. So this has a stacked layer, which is really fun when you color. So what I usually do for that, not initially, when I'm sketching, I'm just kind of loose with it. But when I get to the point where I want to keep all my serifs the same, I create a new layer, and then I'm gonna draw just a single part of my serif. So let's draw one arc like that. And I want them all to be the same. So instead of drawing it multiple times, whoops, I accidentally am on the same layer. I thought I had its own layer. So let me redo that. So I'll start at that center line, create an arc. And now what I want to do is swipe left, duplicate, tap the arrow tool, flip horizontal. I'm going to turn snapping and magnetics on so I can keep it nice and in line. And you can see that I have a nice serif. So now I'm going to duplicate that again. I merged it into one layer, and then I'm gonna move it to the other side. And then I keep a copy of this serif and I use it throughout the entire alphabet. On some letters, you will edit it a bit. Like, for example, let me pull a worksheet again. Like letter G here. You might change the angle. If you have the letter M, I just did the serif on one side here instead of the double like T. And then when the P, you know, it's next to other layers, sometimes you need to shorten it. So it's on the same arc, but shortened. And those are just decisions you will make as the artist designing the lettering style. So now, again, what I would usually do is call this serif. Oop, and I would duplicate it, drag one to the bottom, and then turn it off. And that's the one I'll just keep duplicating each time I draw a letter, even if I'm just using it as a guide and not doing the exact same thing. But for our purposes for the letter O, I'm gonna go ahead and merge my serif layers together just by pinching them down. And then on my serif layer, this part I usually just do by hand. So I'm gonna draw so that it attaches to my O. And I like to do this part by hand just because, like I said, it keeps that kind of hand-drawn versus overly perfect. If you were designing a font, sometimes maybe you'd want it more perfect, but we're just designing a lettering style, not a font. So I like to keep it really more of a handmade look. And it's on its own layer still, again, because we want to be able to come to our O and then erase out some of the lines. So I'm just gonna carefully erase that line there on both sides. Erased a little too much. 2-finger tap to undo, and then keeping multiple layers makes that a lot easier for me to do. And now I can go ahead and merge those down into one layer. And then the last thing I'm gonna do is add some more bevel lines. Sometimes with the letter O, whoops, it could be here and here. I chose to do it right down through the center. So another thing you could do is start at the top. I'm on a new layer again. And if I put my finger down, it makes a perfectly straight line. So I could do that to make sure that they're perfectly aligned, top and bottom, or like that one looks visually off to me. So sometimes what I'll do is just go ahead again on its own layer, just so I can adapt it if I want to. Put my finger down and just draw them individually by eyeballing them. And that's what I do a lot of the time, just because optics sometimes matter more than mathematics, especially when you're drawing letters or spacing them. So that is it for our letter O. And then I'll talk to you about how I chose to color it. I made myself notes here so I don't forget anything. So the first way to color it would be to leave your line art. So let's merge it into one layer. I'm gonna get rid of my template and I'm just gonna call this letter O. So I'll leave my original, I'm gonna duplicate it and bring it over here. So the very first way you could color it is just to drag and drop. So you could just continue filling and then keep changing your colors, make it fun, make it playful. Let's do green and then blue. So that's the easiest way. And then you could also, let's duplicate another one, drag it over. Now this one, I'm gonna tap the layer and click reference, add a new layer below, and we're actually gonna add our color on that layer. That way we're not damaging our line art. So I could do the same thing, or I could do maybe, if I really wanna make it look a little more 3D, I'll start with a light pink, put that on both sides at the top, and then thinking about if the sun's coming this way, my darker pink would be there. And then same thing at the bottom, the light, and then the dark and the dark. Maybe that's a little too dark. So let's go back to this color and then just manually darken it a little bit. Maybe a little more contrast. All right. And then I really liked the look of it without any of the line art as well. I feel like this gives it kind of a modern poppy look. I ended up making my style to not have it. And I opted for a single lowercase I, but I liked how kind of dimensional it looked without any line art. So the way I did that is just to, I'm gonna take reference off of this now. I'm gonna tap the layer and click alpha lock, and that means I can only color on my line art. So you could use a clipping mask to do this, or you can just color right on your line art, which is what I did. I'll use my color sample tool, this little square right here, and then grab my first color. And then I just carefully kind of came in. You can make your brush bigger to make it go faster, and colored all the line art. So this one, I know that that part will be dark pink. So I will go ahead and just keep coloring all the line art. It is a little time consuming, but it's not hard. I actually found it easier than trying to draw each segment individually. And if this side is the bigger side on the top, you want that to be the bigger side on the bottom. So what I mean by that is your center line. If this one is gonna be dark pink up here, then this one needs to be dark there, light there. Alternatively, what you would be doing is using your first one as a guide and then manually redrawing each section. So you would, let me make that smaller. You know, you'd have to redraw each section and color it individually. And that can certainly be done. And you're just drawing and then, you know, adding a different color, doing it on this side. So you can certainly do it that way. I found this way easier. So that's what I did. And then once you get done with that, you could also add like shadows. So if I quickly duplicate that and then take the brightness all the way down. Actually, I don't want to take the brightness all the way down yet. So I'm on my bottom layer here. I'm going to turn off snapping and magnetics. I'll bring it out just a little bit. And then I'll take hue, saturation, brightness, and I'm just going to darken it a little. And then I could take another one, darken it all the way, click motion blur, and kind of add a bit of a shadow. And that's a super fast way to add dimension. But you can see like your shadow layer or your dimensional layer then has all the line art. So it doesn't look quite as good as it does with this style when you're getting that no line art version. Let me show you one more. I got to move my iPad because I have some secret things I'm working on for the next book. So I just got to open this real quick. All right, so for like the Optimist style, for example, when you add dimension to that, that's how I did it with some of the line art. I just made it like more subtle and I just kind of omitted it. Not really, I mean, there's two colors there, but I made the lines themselves kind of blend a little more. And then for this, that's for that one. And then, so if we were doing it for say this example, the Y, which I absolutely love the colors of the Y and the no line art. So I would drag that a little and then just reduce the brightness a little bit. And then again, duplicate, click the bottom layer, reduce the brightness all the way so it's black, and then motion blur, create a bit of a shadow. And then reduce it. And then the thing I usually do is connect these lines to make it look better. So on your dimensional layer. So I have lots of videos on this, creating dimension, and I even have a full class on it that you can do if you're new to working in Procreate, where I go through this slowly and step by step. So you can always do that. So again, I just go through connecting it. So those are things you can do with your style too, as you create your own alphabet. And again, if that stresses you out, no worries. You can work from my alphabet and my examples. So that is it for this month. I've already got next month's drawn as well. I hope you have fun with this. Don't let it stress you out too much. And then by the end of the year, you'll have 12 full lettering styles that you have designed yourself from scratch. And if you make one and you use it, tag me on Instagram at @ByDawnNicole. I would really love to see it.